Splat!
My name is James Batchelor. I'm editor-in-chief of GamesIndustry.biz. I'm a long-running journalist in the industry, but I'm also a massive gamer, and Croc is one of my fondest memories of the 90s. My first impressions of Croc were, I remember playing around my cousin's house. This was very kind of around the time that PlayStation and Nintendo 64 had just come out. I don't believe I had a Nintendo 64 at the time. I think I was still on the original Nintendo. So the whole world of like kind of early 3D games was new to me, and it was just kind of mind-blowing playing these sort of things. And to go from, kind of your typical side-scrolling Mario games to a 3D platformer like Croc, I think Croc might have been the first 3D platformer I played, was just a whole nother step up in terms of what games could be. It felt like a whole new level of what video gaming could be, and I just absolutely adored it. There was so much to enjoy in the way the game played, the character, the music, the levels, the layout, everything, even right down to the puns in the level names. And I remember just spending hours, days with my cousin, just working through Croc 1 together, like taking it in turns and just absolutely loving it. When I first played, it was Croc, the central character, was the draw. It was just, in an era of so many kind of iconic platforming mascots, people like Mario and Sonic, and obviously you had Crash Bandicoot, the year before. Like Croc standing out as like instantly a lovable character was amazing. Like, this little crocodile with a backpack, he was incredibly cute. It was the voice acting. Voice acting obviously was so new in video games. Like, we already had Mario going, yeah, wah, wahoo. But Croc also kind of having his own little personality, like the little high pitch yazoo as you do like a massive ground pound. Like it became a thing. Like I found myself saying yazoo as like jumping off things at the park. Like it was such a lovable creature, such a lovable character that that kind of kept you going. Like you enjoyed playing as that character. And it kind of served as the gateway to the rest of the game's cuteness, like collecting the little Gobbos that are hidden around the different levels. Like you wanted to collect them, you wanted to rescue all of them because they're so sweet and vulnerable. Especially like finding the hidden coloured gems across the hidden throughout the level, and then you find one that's in a cage through the secret door at the end. Like you started to feel motivated to do this. That was like my first impressions, but then like I think as I've grown older and I've looked at video games through more kind of adult eyes and certainly through kind of more professional eyes, I really start to recognize now what the team were doing back then. Like early 3D platformers were amazing. Like every single one was a revolution to me because they were all trying to solve this problem that no one had ever done. Video games had for decades before been a very kind of left to right affair when it comes to platforming games. You start at the left hand side of the screen, you could proceed through the level, overcome the obstacles, you get to the end goal on the right. Navigating a 3D space. Navigating a 3D space was something that no one really knew how to do, and everyone had their own solutions. Nintendo showed this with Mario 64, with their kind of big open world ish kind of levels. Crash Bandicoot had done this kind of gauntlets where you're running kind of rather than left to right, you're essentially running from the back of the level to the front of the level. And Croc splitting it into these kind of little room size sections. Like you felt like you were exploring each level. Like it wasn't just, there was a start to end goal structure to the level, but it wasn't a simple A to B affair. There were different hidden chambers to find. There were different secrets to find. And you look back now and it's like, this was really impressive that a team that had never made a 3D game before managed to make a very kind of easy to navigate 3D space, one that you instantly understood what you were doing, where you were trying to go, where secrets might be. And you had this lovable character to drive through it. It was just amazing. The level puns like gave the game a personality, like even just as much as Croc did. Like it wasn't just grass stage level 1 or volcano stage level 3. It was shouting lava, 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 which is obviously a pun on a song of the time. Like it was brilliant. Like it encouraged you to open the next level. It was like, I wonder what they call the next one. Bond fan that I am, I love that. I'm pretty sure there was a level called License to Chill, like that. It was a snow level. Like it gave a sense of fun. It's so rare nowadays to have a team like this, to have a team of 12 or so people who have a lot of creative freedom to create something that goes on to become as popular, as big, and as potentially influential and certainly revolutionary as something as Croc. Like the industry nowadays, like you look back at titles like Croc and they just wouldn't be made today because everything would be, analyzed to death by, executives trying to work out where the opportunities in the market were. Everything would be based on what is popular, what has worked before. This was the joy of, the 90s developers who were trying to break new ground in early 3D. Was there was no precedent, there was no, kind of rule book, there were no established hits. They were free to make their own choices, free to make their own rules, free to make their own rules, and lay the groundwork for what would come afterwards. And it must have been such an amazing and like privileged time to be making games back then, because you sure as heck wouldn't get that freedom now. Croc is one of those games where there's a real, almost like a spread out community around it. Like I wrote this article about the making of Croc, and when it was published, I jokingly put on Twitter, like, now time to campaign for a remaster. And it was one of those games that I remember well. I remember playing, I remember fondly, but it's not one that comes up in conversation a lot, because a lot of the conversation around the most seminal, like, influential titles of the 90s tends to come around like the typical ones, Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Banjo Kazooie, like certainly in platforming terms, and then others in other genres. And Croc is one that kind of doesn't get as much attention as it deserves, which is a large part of why I wanted to write that article. When I announced on Twitter, I published this article now to campaign for a remaster, the amount of people replying, "Oh, I loved that game. Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to see a remaster, etc." I kind of felt like I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who remembers how good this game was. I'm not the only one who wants more. It beggars belief that Croc hasn't had a remaster before now, at least kind of attention. Like I say, like the nostalgia for the 90s has been going on so long. We've seen how well things like the Crash Bandicoot remakes and the Spyro remakes have performed. I mean, blimey, even Gex the Gecko is getting remakes, and those kind of are notoriously not great games. And it's heartbreaking to see all these things that are getting remakes and not see Croc. So, like, to finally know that there is there is a Croc remaster in the works, it's about damn time. I don't think I fully appreciated back in the day how well the levels of Croc are designed. In a conversation I had with Nick Cusworth, who was on the team, he talked to me about how the levels were designed along the lines of, he referred to 2D platformers like Yoshi's Island, where you can take any screenshot and instantly know what it is you are supposed to be doing in that space. In any given moment of any level, you know what you're meant to do. And you look back at how Croc is laid out with this different, like, room-like structure, and in any given situation, you know where you're meant to be heading. There's a clear exit, but there are likely to be some secrets, and you might see some hints of stuff that you might want to investigate. But there's a clear exit, and it's impossible to get lost in this. Other 3D platformers where they were trying to do the kind of the more open structure. Certainly on the N64 with things like Super Mario 64 and Banjo Kazooie, because they have the capability of doing these large seamless levels, certainly large for the time. It was easy to get lost, or at least not know where you were meant to be heading, because there were so many possibilities. But with Croc, it was all kind of directed, but you never felt like you were being led by the hand. It was almost inherent that you knew, right, that's the main exit over there, so I'm going to head that way. But before I go that way, I am going to rescue that gobbo that I see up on that floating platform. I'm going to get that colored gem that I see over there. I'm going to make sure I collect as many gems as I possibly can before I clear out. You were guided, but never led. And I think and even today, that's such a hard way to design games. It's such a hard thing to nail down and get right. So to see a team that had never made a 3D game do this in like the early 90s, the mid 90s, it just baffles me. And I don't think I fully appreciated that enough back at the time. I am so looking forward to the Croc remaster, because I have missed games like Croc, and specifically Croc Legend of the Gobbos, since first playing it in the 90s. We've had a kind of resurgence of these 90s style 3D platformers. We've had the Crash Bandicoot remakes, we've had the Spyro remakes, and you play them. Like, I never played the Crash Bandicoot games in the day, but playing the remakes, it feels like, wow, this is how video games used to be. This is how video games should be, because there's not as much of this style anymore. So to go back to a property that I'm familiar with, I can't wait. I've honestly been looking at watching videos of people playing through Croc on like YouTube and like watching it in its original PS1 blockiness, and I still get excited at the idea of playing that. The music instantly takes me back to that time. The soundtrack is one of my go-to work soundtracks for, I'll just have it on in the background to kind of give me that lift up. Like, it's such a like chirpy, happy, uplifting soundtrack. Like, nostalgia always plays a large part in these things. You always go back to games and worry that is it not going to be as good as I remember? But just watching it in its original form online, it absolutely is what I remember. It absolutely is going to be what I remember. And I cannot wait to see how it looks when it's fully refreshed and fully revamped. Some of the remasters we've seen in the last few years have breathed new life into something and made it feel brand new. I'm looking forward to playing a Croc remaster with my kids because my kids are used to kind of more modern games, but introducing them to an absolute classic presented in a modern style, I just can't wait for it.